Ashes of the Soul Forged, Chapter 3, Part 2, The Weight of Whispers. As observed by me, Veillis of the Quiet Accord. Dawn brought decision and new trials in equal measure. Edrin woke to find frost painting the world in silver, too early in the season, too heavy for natural causes. His breath clouded as he sat up, muscles protesting the cold ground and colder night. The 6 voices had argued through his dreams, turning rest into battlefield. Mira sat by a small fire, watching something in the flames only she could see. Temperature dropped 3 hours ago, she said, without looking up. Unnatural, localized, centered on us. The sword? The sword's reflection of your state, your fragmenting and reality notices. She finally met his eyes. How many times did you die in your dreams? He had to think. Mars' death, blade across throat. Voss's death, honor becoming rigidity, becoming ending. Rawn's death, authority stripped away, one breath at a time. The bandits, each meeting their sordid ends. Over and over, experiencing each final moment from inside the dying. All of them, he admitted. Every death, every night, like they need me to remember. They do. The sword keeps them conscious enough to suffer, aware enough to demand. It's cruel even by divine weapon standards. She poured a tea from a pot that hadn't been there moments before. Most soul blades simply absorb. Yours torments, because it wants me to break or evolve. Sometimes they're the same thing. She handed him the tea. Herbs he didn't recognize. Warmth that went deeper than physical. Tell me about the pull you feel, the Eastern call. Edrin closed his eyes, sorting through the cacophony for his own senses. There, beneath the arguments, beyond the hunger, a steady rhythm like hammer on anvil. Patient, eternal, waiting. It feels like my father's forge, he said slowly, like coming home after a long journey, but also, he struggled for words, like something being made, something that might fit where the sword cuts. Interesting. Mira's tone suggested she found it anything but. The Accord has a presence 3 days east, a smith who serves their interests. One of the few who remember when creation and destruction were partners rather than enemies. You know him? I know of him, Calum the Eternal. He made my chains, back when I wore them. She touched her wrists where no scars showed, but memory lingered. Brilliant craftsman, terrible judge of consequence. But skilled? Beyond mortal comprehension. If something calls you toward his forge, she trailed off, calculating. Either someone wants you to have what he can make, or someone wants him to have access to you. Both possibilities carry danger. Everything carries danger. Adrian stood, frost crunching beneath his boots. At least this danger might come with answers. They broke camp as the sun struggled through unseasonable clouds. The road east was better maintained than the southern paths. Trade routes between major cities rather than village tracks. More travellers too. Merchants hurrying to complete routes before winter. Refugees fleeing the expanding war. Soldiers moving with the purposeful stride of those following orders they didn't quite understand. And through it all, threads of wrongness. Do you see it? Mira asked as they passed another group of hollow-eyed travellers. The dreams, Edrin said. They all had the look, dark circles, nervous glances, the particular exhaustion that came from sleeping without rest. You mentioned it yesterday. Shared nightmares. Not shared, crafted, someone seeding violence in sleeping minds. She studied a merchant family that startled at shadows. Ishkara's work, maybe, or one of her servants. Dream tampering is their specialty. Why? Same reason you throw oil on a fire. It was already burning, but now it burns hotter, spreads faster, consumes more. She pulled him aside as a military convoy passed. Question is, what needs concealing that requires this much distraction? Edrin felt sorrow's edge pulse against his back. The sword had been quieter since the village, satisfied by the display of power if not the lack of killing. But quiet didn't mean dormant. It listened. It planned. It waited for the moment when resistance would crack. Soon, it whispered. You'll feed me properly soon. I can taste it approaching. There's going to be another fight, Edrin said. The sword knows it, anticipates it. Of course there is. We're walking main roads during an escalating war while you radiate magical threat. Violence finds violence. Mira adjusted her pack with practiced ease. The question is whether you'll let the sword dictate terms when it arrives. Before he could answer, they rounded a bend and found the violence already in progress. The scene was almost artistic in its composition of cruelty. 3 wagons overturned and burning, bodies scattered like discarded toys, merchants by their clothing, family groups by their proximity, and standing among the carnage, 5 figures in armour that belonged to no kingdom Edrin recognised. Not Silvershaw's white and gold, not Dragon's Bend's practical iron. This was black steel that seemed to drink light, decorated with symbols that hurt to perceive directly. The warriors moved through the wreckage with purposeful efficiency, checking bodies, collecting something from each corpse. Harvesters, Mira breathed. Soul thieves. They're collecting death echoes. One of the armoured figures looked up, head tilting as if scenting wind. The helmet turned toward their position on the road. A hand rose, pointing directly at Edrin, or rather, at the sword on his back. Finally, sorrow's edge sang. True feast. These carry power worth consuming. Kill them, take them. Become what you were meant to be. The 6 voices erupted in agreement for once. Enemy combatants, legitimate targets. They're already killers, no mercy needed. Look at that armour, worth a fortune. Dangerous opponents, strike first. Use the shadows, take them apart. 5 souls of power. Imagine the knowledge. Silence, Edrin roared, both aloud and inward. The voices retreated, shocked by his vehemence. Even sorrow's edge paused its hungry song. The harvesters had spread into combat formation, moving with the coordination of long practice. Whatever they were, whoever they served, they recognized a soul weapon when they saw one. And they wanted it. Options? Edrin asked Mira. Run, fight or die. They won't negotiate. Can't be reasoned with. They serve powers that make your sword look like a kitchen knife. She had already shifted into a ready stance, though she carried no visible weapons. 5 of them, 2 of us. Bad odds, even with your new tricks. Then we make better odds. Edrin drew sorrow's edge, and the world responded. Time stretched like taffy, each second pulling into impossible duration. Shadows writhed away from their sources, reaching toward him with eager tendrils. The frost that had painted the morning now spread from where he stood, reality itself growing cold in the weapon's presence. But this time he controlled it, not easily, not perfectly. The power wanted to rampage, to flow wild and free and deadly, but Edrin held it to purpose, shaped it to intent, forced it to serve, rather than command. I'll give you what you want, he told the sword, but on my terms. We do this smart, not savage. Acceptable, the blade responded after a moment's consideration. Show me, you can be more than vessel. Show me you're worth the power I offer. The harvesters charged. They moved like oil over water. Armour making no sound, despite its apparent weight. The leader swung a blade that left trails of absolute darkness. Another carried a spear that seemed to exist in several places simultaneously. The third bore hammers that rang with the sound of bells tolling for the dead. Edrin stepped into shadow and emerged behind their line, Sorrow's edge already moving. The blade met the neck joint of the nearest harvester's armour, finding the gap with supernatural precision. But instead of flesh, edge met resistance that sparked with opposed power. The armour wasn't simply protection, it was a magical construct, designed specifically to counter weapons like his. Clever, Sorrow's edge admitted, but not clever enough. Time, my bearer, use time. The world slowed further. Now Edrin could see the patterns in the armour's defence, the split-second gaps where magic cycled through renewal. He adjusted his strike, threading temporal needle through metaphysical eye. The harvester's head separated from shoulders in a spray of something that wasn't quite blood. 1 down, 4 to go. And the soul that flooded into Edrin was unlike any he'd absorbed before. Ancient, trained, devoted to purposes that predated human civilization. The harvester had been human once, centuries ago, before dedication to soul theft had transformed it into something other. Its knowledge crashed into Edrin's already crowded mind. Techniques for capturing death echoes, methods of soul manipulation, the terrible clarity of purpose unencumbered by doubt. 7 voices now, 7 perspectives, 7 different ways to kill. Mira had engaged 2 of the remaining harvesters, moving with a grace that spoke of her own divine gifts. She fought empty-handed against armed opponents and seemed to be winning, though Edrin couldn't spare attention to understand how. The leader and 1 other focused on him. They had adjusted to his speed, their movements compensating for temporal distortion. The spear that existed in multiple places thrust toward several possible futures, forcing him to dodge not just where it was, but where it might be. Shadow step, emerge, strike, meet resistance, adjust, strike again. Dance between heartbeats, while frost spread and shadows writhed and time stuttered like a broken clock. The second harvester fell, armour cracking like an egg to reveal emptiness beneath. Another soul flooded in, younger than the first, but no less devoted. 8 voices, 8 deaths, 8 different flavours of ending offering their expertise. But something was wrong. The new souls weren't screaming like the others. They flowed into place with disturbing ease, organising themselves without the chaos he'd grown accustomed to, and Sorrow's edge was laughing. "Do you understand now?" the sword asked as Edrin parried the leader's reality-cutting blade. These souls were already ordered, already shaped to purpose. They integrate smoothly because they chose their binding, as you will choose, eventually. Never. Edrin snarled, but doubt coloured the word. The organised souls were so much easier to bear. Their knowledge flowed freely, their skills accessible without the constant battle for control. If all absorptions could be like this. The leader pressed its attack. Dark blade meeting Sorrow's edge in showers of conflicting magic. But now Edrin had the measure of its style, understood its purpose. The harvesters weren't just soul thieves, they were recruiters. They collected death echoes to forge new members, perpetuating their order through carefully crafted reincarnation. "You serve the Void Watchers," Edrin said, the knowledge coming from the absorbed souls, the ones who think death is just another state of service. The leader paused, perhaps surprised he knew that name. In that pause, Edrin struck. not with blade, with shadow. The darkness he commanded wrapped around the harvester like chains of solid night. Time slowed to crystalline crawl as he stepped through space to emerge behind his bound opponent. Sorrow's edge found the one point where all the armor's defenses converged and shattered it. The leader collapsed, armor imploding into the absence it had contained. The soul that rushed into Edrin was vast, old, terrible in its certainty. A commander who had led harvest raids for 500 years, who had forgotten its original name in favour of purpose, who had chosen this existence and embraced it fully. 9 voices. But for the first time, they weren't all screaming. The 3 harvester souls stood apart from the others, organised and patient. They offered their knowledge freely, combat techniques, soul manipulation, the locations of other harvester cells. They had no regret, no rage, no desire for independence. They were tools, and they simply waited to be used. That's better, isn't it? Sorrow's edge purred. See how much easier it is when the souls accept their place, when they understand that absorption isn't ending, but transformation? Edrin wanted to deny it, wanted to rage against the comfortable order these new souls provided. But the relief was real. 3 of 9 voices, cooperating instead of fighting. The pressure in his skull reduced by a third. No, he said, but conviction wavered. It's still wrong. They're still people. We're people. Now they're power. Your power, if you're wise enough to use it. Mira had finished her own battles, 2 more harvesters reduced to empty armour. She approached carefully, noting the way Edrin stood among the carnage. You look different. They're different. He gestured at the fallen armour, ordered souls. They don't fight back. They just serve. And that terrifies you more than the screaming ones. It should. He knew it should. But the quiet in his head where 3 souls rested peacefully was so tempting. If all of them could be like that. We need to move, Mira said. Harvesters don't work alone. Where there are 550 wait, and now they know a soul weapon walks the roads. Edrin nodded, sheathing Sorrow's edge with hands that trembled only slightly. The frost retreated. The shadows resumed normal shapes. Time marched on its steady beat. But inside his head, 9 souls arranged themselves, 6 in chaos, 3 in order. And for the first time since the forge, he wondered if the sword might be right. They ran, not in panic, but with purpose. Mira led them off the main road, through deer paths and dry stream beds, using knowledge of the land that spoke of many years' wandering. Behind them, no obvious pursuit manifested, but Edrin could feel attention turning their way like a great eye-opening. The Void Watchers will send more, Mira explained, as they paused to catch breath in a grove of ancient pines. You killed a cell leader. That demands response. They'll want to know if you're threat or opportunity. Opportunity? Someone who can absorb their ordered souls without losing himself, who can wield their techniques without accepting their philosophy. She gave him a meaningful look. You'd be quite the recruit. I'm not joining soul thieves. No, but you're thinking about how much easier those 3 are to bear. How nice it would be if all 9 were so cooperative. Her voice held no judgment, only understanding. That's how corruption works, Edrin. Not all at once, but piece by piece. Each compromise seeming reasonable until you look back and can't find where you started. He wanted to deny it, but the 3 harvester souls rested so peacefully in his mind. They offered their knowledge without demand, their skills without personality, like having a library instead of a riot. The sword planned this, he realized. It knew what they were, knew how they'd integrate. Probably. Divine weapons rarely act without purpose. She produced food from her pack, travel bread and dried fruit that tasted of better days. Question is whether it's trying to break you or train you. Is there a difference? Sometimes a broken weapon is useful once. A trained weapon serves indefinitely. She studied him while he ate. The pull you feel, is it stronger? Edrin paused, focusing past the mental noise. Yes. The eastern call had intensified, the hammer-song rhythm more insistent. Whatever waited at Caelum's forge grew more urgent with each passing hour. We're maybe 2 days away, he said, less if we push. Then we push, but carefully. The roads will be watched now. They moved through the afternoon like ghosts, avoiding settlements and travellers alike. The war's expansion showed in burned farmsteads and empty villages, in the smoke that rose from too many horizons. Refugees passed in sad processions, carrying what they could save and leaving what they couldn't bear to remember. And through it all, those touched by unnatural dreams. Edrin saw the pattern now, knowledge coming from the absorbed harvester commander. Someone was indeed seeding nightmares, but not randomly. The dreams targeted specific personality types, those prone to anger, fear, resentment. They amplified existing emotions until violence became not just possible, but inevitable. It's surgical, he told Mira as they watched another group of dream-haunted soldiers march past. Whoever's doing this knows exactly which minds to touch and how to push them. Ishkara's work, definitely. But why? The war was escalating naturally. This seems... She paused, realization dawning. Unless escalation isn't the point. Unless the war itself is just cover. Cover for what? That's the question, isn't it? As evening approached, they made camp in ruins that predated current nations. Stone walls that had weathered centuries provided shelter and sight lines. Mira set wards with casual efficiency, while Edrin struggled with a growing discord in his head. The 6 original souls had noticed the 3 peaceful ones. They raged against the unfairness. Why should the harvesters rest easy while they screamed? The conflict created a new kind of chaos. Different, but no less maddening. I could fix that, Sorrow's Edge offered. Order them all. Make them useful instead of torturous. All you have to do is ask. No. The pain will only get worse. Each new soul adding to the chaos. How many can you hold before your mind shatters? 20? 50? 100? I can hold thousands, but only if they're properly organized. I said no, for now, but time favors patience, and I have nothing but time. Sleep brought no relief. The dreams were worse now. Not just the 6 deaths replaying, but the 3 harvester souls showing him what they'd done. Centuries of collecting death echoes. The techniques for extracting the last moments of consciousness. The careful cultivation of souls that would accept ordering. He woke to find frost had spread from where he slept, turning the ancient stones into a winter palace. His breath misted in air gone Arctic cold. Your power grows, Mira observed from where she tended a small fire that fought valiantly against the supernatural chill. But without control, it just reflects your inner state. I'm losing, Edrin admitted. Each day it gets harder. Each soul makes it worse, and now knowing it could be different. He gestured helplessly. What if the sword is right? What if trying to preserve their individuality is just prolonging everyone's suffering? What if it is? Mira asked simply. Does that make it wrong to try? I don't know anymore. Good. Certainty is death's realm. As long as you're questioning, you're still human. She handed him tea that steamed like hope. One more day to the forge. Can you hold on that long? I have to. But even as he said it, the 9 voices in his head began their morning arguments, and he wondered if have to would be enough. The attack came with dawn, not harvesters this time. Soldiers wearing Dragon's Bend colours, but their eyes held the particular glaze of those following orders that came from dreams rather than commanders. They moved with sleepwalker precision, surrounding the ruins in perfect formation despite having no way to coordinate their approach. Dream puppets, Mira spat. Someone's pulling strings from the other side of sleep. 30 men. Armed, armoured, moving with unified purpose toward an objective they probably couldn't name. And at their centre, a figure that didn't belong. Tall, beautiful in the way poisoned flowers were beautiful. Wearing robes that shifted between purple and black-like bruises in motion. Servant of Ishgara, the harvester commander's memory supplied. Dreamwalker, thought poisoner, soul twist. The robed figure smiled, and even at distance, Edrin felt the wrongness of it. The boy with the hungry blade. My mistress sends greetings and an invitation. Join us willingly and keep your mind. Refuse and become another dream puppet dancing to our design. Counteroffer, Edrin called back. Leave now and keep your souls. Stay and feed my blade's hunger. The smile widened, confident, but you've never faced one who walks between sleep and waking. Your little sword can't cut dreams. Want to bet? Sorrow's Edge whispered, eager as always for challenge. The dream walker raised hands that trailed purple smoke. Reality rippled around them, the border between waking and sleeping growing thin. The soldier puppets advanced in perfect lockstep, and behind them came things that shouldn't exist outside nightmares. Fear-given flesh, doubt shaped into claws. The particular terror of losing oneself made manifest in writhing shadow. Edrin drew Sorrow's Edge, and the world exploded into chaos. Time stretched, but the nightmare creatures moved independent of temporal flow. Shadows reached for him, but they were already occupied by dream stuff. The careful control he'd been building shattered against enemies that followed no rules. A puppet soldier struck with mechanical precision. Edrin parried, riposted, opened the man's throat in a spray of red that seemed too bright. The soul that flooded in was wrong, empty. The personality had been scooped out, leaving only echoes of skill and fragments of memory. 10 voices, but one was hollow. They're already dead inside, he realized with horror. The dreams ate them from within. Less talking, more surviving. Mira had engaged her own dance with nightmare creatures, fighting things that shouldn't have been solid enough to strike. 3 more puppet soldiers pressed forward. Edrin flowed between them, Sorrow's Edge singing its joy at finally being unleashed. Each cut dropped an enemy. Each death brought another hollow soul. The count rose, 11, 12, 13. But these weren't people anymore, just shells piloted by foreign will. The nightmare creatures were worse. When Sorrow's Edge struck them, they bled impossibility. One sprouted new limbs from its wounds, another divided into smaller fears. A third simply laughed as steel passed through it without effect. Physical blade can't cut metaphysical enemies, the sword observed. But we are more than physical now. Remember the shadows. Remember the time. Remember that reality bends to our will. Adrian reached for the new powers, but control slipped like water. Shadow stepping worked, but he emerged in places he hadn't aimed for. Time distortion made his movements faster, but also erratic. Frost spread without direction, hindering as much as helping. And through it all, the Dreamwalker watched with amusement. Struggling? Let me help. They gestured, and the world tilted. Suddenly Edrin stood in his father's forge. Brand worked at the anvil, shaping something that might have been a sword, or might have been hope. The fire was warm. The sound was home. Everything he'd lost, right there, waiting. "This isn't real," Edrin said, but his voice shook. "Isn't it? I pulled it from your dreams. Every detail perfect. Stay here. Put down that nasty blade. Be the smith you were meant to be." The illusion was perfect. Too perfect. It included things the Dreamwalker couldn't know. The way Brand hummed off-key when focused, the particular pattern of burns on the workbench, the smell of Hannah's bread from the house beyond. Because they hadn't pulled it from his dreams. They'd pulled it from the absorbed souls. "Mistake," Edrin snarled. "You're in my head, but so are they, and they don't appreciate the intrusion." The Hollow Soldier souls might have been emptied, but the others, the 6 originals and 3 harvesters, they had opinions about mental invasion. For the first time since Edrin had absorbed them, they unified in purpose. Get out of our head. The forge shattered like glass. Reality reasserted with a snap that left the Dreamwalker staggering. And in that moment of vulnerability, Edrin understood. The shadows he commanded weren't just physical darkness. They were the spaces between thought and reality. The time distortion wasn't just slowing the world. It was showing him the gaps between moments where dreams tried to intrude. He didn't need to cut the nightmare creatures. He needed to deny their existence. Sorrow's edge laughed as understanding dawned. "Now you begin to see. We are more than Death Dealer. We are Reality Shaper, Existence Enforcer, the blade that cuts what should not be." Edrin moved, and this time control came easily. He stepped not through shadow, but through the space between waking and sleeping. He swung not at the nightmare creatures, but at their connection to the dreaming realm. Sorrow's edge cut threads invisible to normal sight, and monsters dissolved like morning mist. The Dreamwalker's amusement curdled to alarm. "Impossible. You're just a boy with a stolen weapon." "No," Edrin corrected, advancing through puppet soldiers who collapsed as their dream strings were severed. "I'm a smith's son who knows that understanding your tool is the first step to mastery." The remaining puppets fell like wheat before a scythe. Each cut freed them from dream slavery, though death was their only liberation. 20 souls now, but half were hollow echoes. The weight was strange, heavy with numbers, but light on personality. The Dreamwalker tried to flee, stepping sideways into dream. But Edrin followed, sorrow's edge cutting through the barrier between states of consciousness. They danced through a landscape of crystallized nightmares and liquefied hopes, while reality waited, patient for their return. "This is our realm," the Dreamwalker protested. "You have no power here." "I have the power you gave me. Every soul you hollowed out knew the paths between sleeping and waking. Their knowledge is mine now." He struck, blade meeting dream flesh with the sound of breaking bells. "Their suffering is mine, and their vengeance." The Dreamwalker fell, form dissolving into purple smoke and last regrets. But as they died, they smiled. "You think you've won? You've just announced yourself to every power that matters. My mistress knows your name now." The Void Watchers know your capabilities. The Aurelian know your location. You've painted a target on your soul that gods will see. Let them come, Edrin said, though the words tasted of bravado more than confidence. The soul that flooded in as the dreamwalker died was different again, not hollow like the puppets, not ordered like the harvesters, but fluid, mutable. It shifted between forms and thoughts like quicksilver, bringing knowledge of dream-walking and thought-shaping and the terrible freedom of existing between states. 21 voices, 7 kinds of soul, a chorus of the dead that threatened to drown out whatever remained of Adrian himself. Reality snapped back into focus. He stood among the fallen, sorrow's edge dripping with impossibility. Mira watched from where she'd efficiently dispatched her own opponents, expression unreadable. "That was either the most brilliant or most foolish thing I've ever seen," she said finally. "You followed a dreamwalker into their own realm and won. That's not supposed to be possible." "I had help," he gestured vaguely at his head. "They didn't like someone else invading the space they've claimed. And now, how many? 21, but only half have personality. The rest are just echoes, skills without self." He swayed, exhaustion hitting like a hammer. "I can't. It's too many, too much. I'm losing track of who's thinking what." "Then we run, fast and hard. The forge is close. Maybe 8 hours if we don't stop." She was already moving, gathering what they needed. "Can you make it?" "Do I have a choice?" "There's always a choice. It's just that most of them are bad." They ran through morning into afternoon, stopping only when bodies demanded it. The voices in Edrin's head had formed factions now. The originals who screamed, the harvesters who waited, the hollow who echoed, and the dreamwalker who shifted. Each group pulled different directions, wanting different things, demanding different actions. "I could fix this," Sorrow's Edge offered for the 100th time. "One word from you and I'll bring order to chaos, peace to pain, purpose to pandemonium." "No," Edrin gasped. But the word came harder each time. As the sun began its descent, they crested a hill and saw it, a forge that shouldn't exist. It sat in a valley that maps didn't show, surrounded by trees that grew in impossible geometries. Smoke rose from its chimney in patterns that spelled words in languages predating human speech. And from within came the sound of hammering, patient, eternal, crafting things that bridged the gap between real and ideal. "Caelurm's forge," Mira said unnecessarily. "Last chance to turn back. Once you enter a place of making like this, you're changed by it. No exceptions." Edrin felt the pull so strongly now, it was like hooks in his chest. Whatever waited in that forge, it called to him with his father's voice and his own desperate need for balance. "I'm already changed," he said. "At least this change. I choose." They descended into the valley as shadows lengthened and stars began their nightly vigil. Behind them the world burned with war and divine machination. Ahead waited answers, or more questions, or possibly both. But also, just maybe, hope. Though hope, as Edrin was learning, often came with its own price. The forge door stood open, spilling light that belonged to no natural flame. Edrin paused at the threshold. 21 voices suddenly unified in wariness. This place radiated power. Not the hungry consumption of Sorrow's Edge or the twisted manipulation of dream magic, but the steady strength of creation sustained across millennia. It felt like standing at the edge of the place where ideas became real. "Caelurm allows visitors?" he asked Mira. "Allows is a strong word. Tolerates maybe, endures. She studied the entrance with her own wariness. He serves the accord, but predates it, follows rules because he chooses to, not because he must. That makes him dangerous, unpredictable, which is worse. From within came a voice like mountains settling into place. Are you going to stand there analysing, or are you going to enter? The thing you seek won't forge itself, and I have limited patience for mortal dithering. They entered. The interior defied the modest exterior. This was no simple smithy, but a cathedral to craft itself. The ceiling rose beyond sight, lost in shadows that might have been smoke, or might have been the dreams of unborn stars. Workbenches covered in projects spanning centuries-lined walls that curved in directions geometry hadn't named. And at the centre, working at an anvil that looked carved from a single block of night, stood Calum. He wasn't impressive in the way of warriors or kings. Average height, average build, features that would blend in any crowd. Until you looked at his hands. Those belonged to someone who had shaped the impossible so long that possibility itself bore their fingerprints. The boy with too many souls, he said, without looking up from his work, and the woman who escaped her chains. Vilis said you might come. Valis was here? Edrin's voice cracked with a mix of hope and suspicion. 3 days ago, maybe 4. Time moves oddly in places of making. Now Calum did look up, eyes older than civilizations, assessing what stood before him. 21 souls? Impressive. Most die by the 3rd. How's the screaming? Loud. I imagine so. That blade you carry, may I see it? Edrin hesitated. Sorrow's edge had never left his side since the binding. The thought of another touching it sent spikes of possessive fury through him, though whether from himself or the sword, he couldn't tell. Don't, the blade warned. He'll try to change us, cage us, make us less than we are. I need your word you'll return it, Adrian said carefully. Boy, if I wanted to take your blade, your permission would be irrelevant. I helped forge the chains that bind concepts to reality. One soul weapon, however hungry, is hardly a challenge. But his tone held amusement rather than threat. I give my word. Examination only. Slowly, feeling like he was peeling away skin, Edrin drew Sorrow's edge and offered it hilt first. The moment Calum touched it, the screaming stopped. Not diminished, not muted, stopped. 21 voices fell silent simultaneously, leaving a quiet so profound, Edrin nearly collapsed from the shock of it. His mind, constant battlefield for days, suddenly knew peace. Interesting, Kylam murmured, turning the blade to catch light that revealed patterns mortal eyes couldn't normally perceive. Nethrix outdid himself. This isn't just a soul weapon, it's a soul ecosystem. Designed to grow, adapt, evolve, to become whatever its bearer needs most, or fears most, or both. Can you make them stop screaming permanently? I could, but that would require breaking the weapon's fundamental nature and breaking this particular blade. He handed it back, and the voices crashed down like an avalanche. Would probably break you as well. You're too integrated now. Separate the chorus and the conductor dies. Edrin sheathed the blade with shaking hands. Then why did I come here? What was calling me? Ah, that would be this. Kayla moved to a different workbench, one covered in white cloth like a funeral shroud. He pulled it back to reveal a hammer, but not just any hammer. Bran's hammer, but transformed. The honest steel now held threads of starlight, the worn handle now wrapped in leather that might have been cut from the hide of hope itself, and within the metal, pulsing faint but steady, a light that looked like dawn, seen through tears. Your father's essence given new form, Shalem explained. Vaelis asked me to forge a counterweight, something to balance the sword's hunger with creation's patience. It's not finished. Soul work takes time. But it called to you because it recognizes what you are. What am I? The son of its origin, the bearer of its opposite, the only one who might wield both without being torn apart. He covered the hammer again. 6 weeks more, minimum. The soul needs to settle into its new housing. Rush it, and you get a weapon that breaks reality rather than shapes it. I don't have 6 weeks. I barely have 6 days before. Edrin stopped, unsure what deadline he faced, but certain one approached. Before the voices drive you mad, before the war finds you, before the gods decide you're too dangerous to live. Calum shrugged. All valid concerns. None of them change how long soul forging takes. Then what am I supposed to do? Survive, learn, grow strong enough to be worthy of what's being made. The ancient smith returned to his primary work. Or don't. Creation offers tools. Whether mortals use them wisely isn't my concern. That's it? That's your help? I'm making you a weapon that shouldn't exist from a soul that should have passed on, bending reality into shapes that offend several natural laws. What more did you expect? A hug and words of encouragement. But Calum's tone held rough kindness. If you want advice, I'll offer this. The sword tells you the souls must scream or serve. Both are lies. There's a third option, but you have to discover it yourself. What option? If I told you, it wouldn't be discovery, would it? Now go. You've seen what waits. Knowing it exists will have to be enough for now. Edrin wanted to argue, to demand more, but Mira touched his arm. He's given what he can. Pushing further invites consequences we can't afford. They left the forge as night claimed the valley. Behind them the sound of hammering resumed. Patient, eternal, shaping impossibility into tool. Ahead the road stretched dark and full of threats they could no longer avoid. 6 weeks, Edrin said, tasting the time like bitter medicine. 6 weeks, Mira agreed. Think you can stay sane that long? The 21 voices in his head resumed their arguments, their demands, their screaming needs for acknowledgement or order or release. I'll have to, he said. But even to his own ears, it sounded more like prayer than promise. Above them, stars wheeled in patterns that spelled out divine intentions. The war raged on, fed by dreams and ambitions. Gods and demons moved pieces on boards mortals couldn't see. And somewhere in the spaces between, a hammer waited to be born, and a boy struggled to remain himself long enough to claim it. Tick-tock, Sorrow's Edge whispered. Time favours patience, but patience has limits. How much longer before you break, my bearer? How much longer before you beg for the order I offer? Edrin didn't answer. He couldn't, because with each passing hour, the honest answer changed, and never in directions that favoured hope.
The story continues, as all stories must. Find the next chapter at Codex 11. Subscribe, lest the Forge's call go unheard.